not that many people. Taji Chestnut, he, him, co-chair, also in the youth subcommittee. Elliot?
Elliot Young, PCCEP co-chair, he, him, Lakiana.
Lakiana Drury, he, him pronouns, alternate co-chair of PCCEP.
And Anne.
Ann Campbell, secretary, she, her. Amy?
Yeah, Amy Anderson, chair of the Behavioral Health Subcommittee.
And
Thank you,
why don't
Amy.
we go-
Claudia?
Hi everyone, my name is Claudia. I'm the project assistant for PCCEP. Thank you all for being here this afternoon, or evening, I should say.
Barb?
Okay, we're getting more coordinated here. Hi, my name is Barb Rainish, and I am not a member of PCCEP, but I'm around all the time, and I'm part of the Behavioral Health Subcommittee. She, her pronouns. Was there anything else I needed? Okay,
Nope.
thanks, Taji.
Thank you, Barb. Jared?
Hi, Jared Hager, Department of Justice.
Well, thank you, Jared. Sounds like you're an important call, so I'll leave you to it. Mary Claire?
Mary Claire Buckley, Portland Police.
Thank you, Mary Claire. Theo?
Is Theo Latta, PCCEP staff member.
Kristen? Welcome back. Leticia? I said that right? Michelle?
Hi, my name is Michelle Anastasia. I'm the Business and Community Liaison for Job Corps.
Thank you. Sorry, Rochelle now. I think I might have.
Hi, Rochelle Silver, community member.
Thank you, Rochelle. And then Casey Lewis.
Hi there, Casey Lewis, he, him pronouns, just here as an observer.
Thank you. And Kristen or Letitia, if you want to say anything you can. If you don't, no problem. We can probably just get started from here. So this is the steering committee meeting for PCCEP, ramping up for next week's, or no, is it next week's? I don't know the exact date. It might be the week after next. The general body meeting for March now. Time is flying when we're having fun. So our first item of discussion is our bylaws. The steering committee has, not just the steering committee, but many PCCEP members, community members have expressed an interest in sort of revisioning some of the bylaws, additions that we could be making. I don't know how in depth we want to get into this topic though. I know we sort of have a good amount of time. We have about 20 minutes to discuss it. Basically, excuse me, we want to try to have as much of a sort of democratic process as we make these revisions to the bylaws as possible. So whatever that could entail will work in our benefit. So we have sort of a list of things we want to add, change, and what I think we decided on is that the staff would make revisions just based on the conversations and then bring to the either the steering committee or the full board meeting. I don't remember if we set like the specific one. They would bring a draft and we would then discuss and add amendments and make revisions to it from there. Claudia or Theo, did you make those drafts, bylaw additions and edits? If so, could we see them? If not, then could we just confirm that we'll have those?
Taji, there was the shared Google Doc where Anna and I proposed some changes.
Okay, sorry, I have not been checking on all my emails, so go ahead and take this rest of this.
Okay, I sent this out to the steering committee, and what I thought was just get some ideas going that we could discuss now. And in terms of a process, I thought that if we could agree on it, we could vote on, what we would like to forward to the full board for discussion, debate, and a vote. But if I could share my screen, I could share that. Amy, you've got a question?
Actually, I would like to make a comment. Remember when we discussed this before and everybody on the steering committee wasn't real thrilled about doing the bylaws? So Andre created some workarounds. But what I was really thinking was some of the stellar bylaws that I've seen created were done by the Multnomah County Health Department. The ICS, when we worked on them, they were just like impeccable. And I guess others might have seen other copies of bylaws that are really written well. And I think we should use a framework that's already working well and implement our language into that framework of the document.
Okay, well, I mean, I think looking at other examples would be great. What I was imagining is working with what we've got and thinking about things that we need to change. But if there's other things that, you know, that we haven't thought of that you would like to see changed, then certainly we could discuss those. But let me share the document so you could see the things that came up, at least among the officers or whatever who contributed to this document.
I also want to jump in and say that I like that idea, Amy, and I did look at some other bylaws and I added two to the list, you'll see.
Okay, so basically what I did is I just cut and pasted or cut and copied from the actual bylaws, so that C there, that's in the bylaws, and then just added in this highlighted version. And this is an issue that emerged and has emerged in the past about voting. And so what I tried to do is take what I thought I heard on email in terms of people's desires and try to create a process that we could follow. So what it says is once the vote has been taken, the results will be tallied and announced. If there is a tie between yes and no votes, which is what occurred last time, the body may reconsider the vote at the request of any member. But what would be different from what happened last time is debate will be reopened and a new vote will be conducted. So in other words, rather than just having someone change their vote, if there's a reconsideration, it allows people to reopen debate and discuss the matter further, because ostensibly the reason for a revote is there's new information that needs to be shared. So that's one of the suggestions. The other section is under section 8 under subcommittees. So there's been some sort of lack of clarity about how things work on subcommittees. And one of the issues, which is actually in the bylaws, and I didn't realize, is that subcommittees should be voting on their recommendations brought forward from subcommittees, and that it requires a 50 plus 1, 50% plus 1 of the PCCEP members on that subcommittee to forward something. My experience with subcommittees is we haven't actually been doing that process. So I think it's important to recognize that that's in the bylaws and we should follow it. And then the parts B, C, and C are new additions, which I'm recommending in terms of regularizing a process for choosing leadership. So subcommittees will elect chairs or co-chairs on an annual basis, and then laying out what chairs are responsible for. So chairs are responsible for developing agendas for the meetings in consultation with the PCCEP members on the subcommittee. And part C, co-chairs of PCCEP and subcommittee chairs will be responsible for setting agendas and meeting with members of the public and city staffers to move the work forward. Summaries of any meetings with elected officials will be provided to the full body in a timely manner. And I think that arose, that issue of whether sort of subcommittee chairs could be meeting with elected officials, and so this would clarify, you know, what the role of subcommittee chairs would be. And so those are the things that I wrote. And do you want to take the next sections? I think you worked on those.
Yeah, thank you. I added number 8, respect the group. This was taken in part from a county, well, in my looking around for other bylaws, as it relates to a group process. Hold to time agreements, avoid being argumentative or engaging in other disruptive behavior, address conflicts in private, not in the group, unacceptable behavior such as publicly subjecting members to false allegations and or bullying will not be tolerated. And then the last one, if you want to go down a little bit, conflict resolution. Can you go down just a little bit, Elliot? If there's
Down, up, or down this way?
Oh, I just
Is
wanted
that
to,
good?
yeah, that's good. Conflict resolution, we don't have a bylaw on that or the other one. If there's a conflict between members that they are unable to resolve, here are some steps for possible resolution. Number 1, members can reach out to steering committee members for assistance. Oops. Members can reach out to PCCEP staff for assistance, and members can reach out to the mayor's office for assistance. So we wanted to have something in our bylaws about things that that have come up in my mind for the group.
So below that is the group values, but let's focus on just the
yeah.
bylaws for now. So are there any thoughts about the proposed ideas here that anyone?
Yeah, Elliot, real quick. I love what you guys did, but it's extremely out of order and unorganized. If you look at bylaws, they're set up by categories like membership, terms. I mean, there's so much important information that we don't even have on the table that go into bylaws.
Amy, this is not the bylaws. These are just excerpted. If you look at the whole bylaws, it has stuff about membership. What we've done here is just cut out the sections that we're adding to. So if you look at the top of this document, which it has the link to the bylaws, which I could put in the chat. So you could see all the bylaws, and rather than put all the bylaws in because it was hard
Yeah, but
to...
the whole thing needs work. That whole document needs work.
We sent out a request and sent out a request for additions or edits needed to the bylaws 2 weeks ago. And I don't know if she received any information from any PCCEP members around that for us to discuss, because we have, I would say, pretty integral bylaws in place, and that there is specific sections that need additions, but I don't think we need to revise the entirety of the bylaws. In my personal opinion, I'm not saying that.
Yes, and not to cut in, but yeah, I didn't receive any response when I asked that.
Because this is too hard to do for me online. I need to do it in a conversation.
That's what they're trying to do.
Lakiana has his hand up. I don't mean to jump in, but I don't know who can see the hands raised.
Yeah, Lakiana.
Hey, couple thoughts. Yeah, I think Amy's comments are good, and I would just say that I think that this is just part of the filling out process. I don't think this is final. So I hear what you're saying, Amy, and just everybody else, but I think it's not done. So we're just kind of working on that. And it also did bring up another point I had. I think this process, either the staff or steering committee should work to reach out to individual members to make sure that they've seen this. I'm not sure, especially with the largeness of what this is, that an email would suffice to get input, because obviously we know that members do have thoughts on it, but they might not just be checking them regularly. So I would suggest doing some kind of outreach to them so that when we get to the full body meeting, that there's less questions, because this could take up a lot of thought. The only thought I currently had, if you scroll down to the part about conflict resolution, where that section, yeah, keep going just a little bit. If there's a conflict between members, I would suggest where it says here are some steps for possible resolution, I would make it more clear. Instead of saying here are some steps for possible, I would say here are the steps for resolution, and mark them in order of how they should be done and what should happen, because my fear is that people will then have like a menu of options to choose from, and will utilize any one of them that they see fit, rather than there being an outlined step process of what should be done. And we've had some conversations as far as the steering committee, and I think maybe those should be added into it with it, such as, if there's a conflict, documenting the incident, yada, 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 and kind of going from there. So that's my thoughts.
Lakiana, since you raised that, I was just wondering, besides the documenting, do you have a particular order that you would like to see people work through? Like, is this the order, or is there a different order?
I think it's interesting. I think if it's an individual conflict with someone that can be resolved between you and the person, I would suggest that be the first step. Then I would suggest probably PCCEP staff, then maybe the steering committee, and then I would put the mayor's office as the last one. It gets a little tricky with depending on what the thing is, right? Like, me and Elliot had an intense confrontation at this committee, right? And we could probably take that to the side and just do that. Elliot sent me a threatening message. Then I would probably start with PCCEP staff and kind of go from there. And then I think that's where I think the staff would be a great place to figure out, should it go to the steering committee, or does it need to go right to the mayor's office, or kind of how it goes there. But I think you guys should just clearly outline what the steps are and make them clear so that people follow those. And we don't currently have a strong system for that.
Thank you, Lakiana. That is why I put this together, and I talked with Judith about it as well. And I like what you're saying, having concrete steps. I think for me, giving people choices, we can't make anybody do anything, right? We can't make someone go to staff and not go to the steering, it just gives people options. That's why we're saying here are steps for possible resolution. At least we have something, and the first step is if there's a conflict between members that they're unable to resolve. So of course that would be the first option, I would assume. But if there's some different wording there, because I think from my experience doing mediation, it's nice. I've observed that it's nice for people to feel like they had some options, right? So they don't have to go to one place. And I think all of these options feel like they're safe, like you could go to this person, you could go to that. So, but if you would like to add some stuff, I think that'd be great. And I think it would be really wonderful to have a conflict resolution bylaw.
Yeah, I do too. And I agree with the options. I just think that some of them are very different, right? Like going to the mayor's office before we've even consulted with the PCCEP, I think could create challenges. So I would suggest just adding a documentation piece to it. And then I'll add some suggestions to it, and you guys can see, and then other people can obviously weigh in once we get to the full meeting. But I ultimately like the idea.
I put the link for everyone to have access to this document, so you could actually just add your comments directly on the document in the chat. Anyone else, either PCCEP members or community members who have comments on any of these ideas?
It's okay.
Barb has a comment. Go ahead.
Barb has more than that. If you guys are going to go through these and make some changes, I would like to suggest strongly that you look at your subcommittee section, because first of all, on page 307, it says PCCEP is not required to administer a formal vote to make recommendations. That's under F for voting, which makes no sense. But more than that, when it comes to the subcommittees, there's no more of 13, there's no more than 13 of you at one time. And what subcommittee has the most of you guys other than here? Because what does that mean? Does that mean if PCCEP cares about something that's going on in a subcommittee, or if a member, if a member is concerned about what's going on in a subcommittee or interested, I mean, if that makes sense, then they show up at the subcommittee meeting because they can vote. This doesn't seem like community engagement to me when it's set up that way. Do you understand what I'm saying? Anybody?
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and this is the bylaws that were inherited, before I sort of came
Listen,
on
you're
board.
you're sort of talking about, I'm going to talk over you. It's sort of, sorry, Elliot. You're
Go ahead.
talking sort of about this point, and this is something that has bothered me from the very beginning, because if you think about it logically, I mean, sometimes there's only one PCCEP member, maybe two, maybe three on the normal subcommittees. The extra subcommittees, that's a little bit different. But I just want to point out to you that making community input like only be for voting, or not be for voting, but only for comment in those situations, it makes no sense to me.
I hear you, and I actually think, I mean, I wasn't even contemplating that, but I think that that's a good change. Like, I agree with you that oftentimes there are very few PCCEP members on the subcommittees, and I don't see any reason why people from the public should not have a vote on those subcommittees. So I would be in favor of changing that to say the majority of whoever is present at a subcommittee meeting. Do other PCCEP people think that? What do they think about that?
That's how it has been. It just, I guess it wasn't formally put in there, but that's what we've used in other subcommittees. And I think the original mental health subcommittee, I'm forgetting the actual name of it.
SPMI.
They used that format too. So I think maybe just clarifying it and putting it in there.
I'm confused. You're disagreeing with Elliot?
No, I'm saying that we have non-PCCEP members have voted on things on a subcommittee level.
Got it.
Yeah, I mean,
It
I
was
don't know.
something we ignored. Got it. Perfect, Elliot.
And
Sorry.
I wonder, and maybe we'll have to consult with the city attorney about this, but it says this line about steering committee meetings are subject to Oregon meeting laws, must abide by quorum requirements when voting. So I don't know, there obviously can't be a quorum requirement for the public because we don't know like who those members are, but I would be in favor of changing this to saying that the majority of people present, can vote on recommendations. Okay, any other comments about any of this?
I wonder also that we didn't really clarify the language around like the meeting language. I'm a little confuzzled about still. It says in section C, co-chairs of PCEP and subcommittee chairs will be responsible for setting agendas and meeting with members of the public and city staffers to move the work forward. Summaries of any meetings with elected officials be provided the full body in a timely manner. I just don't want that to like bite anyone. Like, I just feel like it implies that any meeting with the elected official constitutes the necessity of a summary of a meeting, as if all meetings with elected officials are always, I guess, productive, maybe is the right word to put, or like has an ends to it, you know, there's an end to it, a point to it, when there has been plenty of meetings I've had, you know, with not like Commissioner Artist yourself, but you know, that meeting, for example, was like one example of a meeting where it was like we wanted to just get a question answered, but it wasn't going to be like a meeting that we would have any substance to share back with people unless there was like a great idea that came out of it to share. You know what I mean?
I guess
and also like how will those summaries be disseminated? Like, can we just say that I'll take notes from this meeting and then I'll share those notes with my subcommittee at a meeting, and that will be what the summary is? Like, does it have to be to the entire body? Like, what? I just don't think there should just be clarification there, at least.
I guess this is, you know, was raised by a PCEP member, several PCEP members, about feeling uninformed about meeting with elected officials. And I think that there's a distinction between meeting with elected officials and meeting with staffers or members of the public. But I do think that in general, like, we're not having logistical meetings with elected officials. Like, it tends to rise to a higher level. And so therefore, I think providing some summary that's distributed to, I would say, the full body would help to alleviate some of the concerns.
Right. And then quick other thing I would say about that is that for example, the joint mayor meeting we have monthly, there's notes taken by Candace, or someone usually takes notes for those meetings. And I just want to try to cut work from PCEP members as much as possible. So if it can be the responsibility of the staff to make these summaries available if they're being present at those meetings, or if it can be those notes that we take normally for the joint meetings can be supplemented as the summaries, like just to try to create less work. I don't know if that needs to be written anywhere. I'm just sort of saying.
Yeah, I think Lakiana had his hand raised, and let me just, Lakiana, is that from before?
No, that was from now. I agree with what Taji was saying. I think what would be best is just like, you know, it doesn't have to be like a whole summary of like, here's everything that happened, but just maybe like an email or something like, hey, we met with so-and-so, and leaving it up to the, you know, the people who are at the meeting to decide how, you know, was it necessary for a bunch of notes to be taken or whatever. I think just at least keeping people in the loop of meetings being had is what the request was.
Yeah, and I do think staff could do that in the case of those meetings, regular meetings with the mayor. Candace is taking notes. We could just cut and paste. But I also think staff should be, I know we have the recordings, but the public on a number of occasions has said that we don't have minutes on our website, and we maybe don't need like minutes that record every part of the conversation. But I think when we have subcommittee meetings, we should have regularly posted, you know, under the agenda items, this is what was discussed, this is what was
just decided. Like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that
just like basic summaries so that the public who can't attend the meetings and doesn't have the time to watch the whole thing can be updated on what we're doing. All right. So I think what we could do, I don't think we necessarily need to vote on these. Like, I don't think we've actually had a full enough discussion to even vote on it. But what we could do is bring this to the full board. I could distribute this document, and people could just add to it whatever they want, you know, in the next couple of weeks, and then we could bring it to the full board for discussion. a vote, and see if we can move forward that way. And Amy, in terms of your comment, I think, you know, in those 2 weeks, you could look at other examples and see if there are other things in the bylaws that need
I can help you and we can look at it at Andre's.
Need reworking, because I think, you know, everything could be up for revision at this point.
Yeah, I'll be happy to, Barb and I are gonna work on formatting a, what I would call my draft copy, and then y'all can, I'll share it with everyone, just to give you an idea of what I see as just a format, you know, layout is all categorizing everything, putting everything in place. Like some of these sections belong under different headers, and it's all good material. I just want it organized in the fashion I'm accustomed to, I guess. So I will work on it with Barb.
Okay, great. So I'll pass it back to you, Taji. I guess we're done with this. Let me
Okay,
stop
cool.
sharing.
Yeah. So the next item of discussion for tonight is on the Corporate Patrol Services. Actually, I was just crafting an email to Theo about getting a feedback form together for the town hall we had last Thursday. I think it went overwhelmingly well. We had, I believe at peak, about 60 or 70 community, well, I can't say they're all community members, but 60 or 70 people on the call. There was an overwhelming majority of community members, obviously, just with that amount of people. And there was a lot of like people who we've been reached out to who came to the town hall, which was really great. We had a lot of really great discussion as well, really helps continue the process of these recommendation building, the recommendation building that we'll need to be doing. We have a work session happening this Thursday. Is it this Thursday? Next Thursday, next Wednesday, excuse me, the 17th, which will be to sort of not only debrief with the community about the town hall, but also to sort of get our, pull our sleeves up and start getting down to like, okay, what is this? What does this feedback mean? How can we best apply this to recommendations? You know, how did the conversation from last week help provide the basis for what we're going to be working on recommendation wise? So overwhelming, you know, I have generally heard positive feedback about the town hall as well. Like I said, I'm gonna send this email to Theo and Claudia about a feedback form to maybe send to the community about the format we had. It was new information, and it was new sort of ways to get feedback from people just compared to the previous waves we've done it. So I just think it would be good to hear from the community if they had any feedback to give us that would help us improve next time. We do have a second round of feedback we'll be soliciting once we have recommendations for folks to look at, as well as there's just other community members who are saying that maybe even just doing this same town hall format in another setting might be helpful. So was going to discuss that more with Sam when we had our like internal debrief as like the co-chairs with this and the city staff about it. Haven't had that either, but once we have that and have more information to give, I'll give it out. I don't know if, oh yeah, like I said, 17th, next work session. I feel like I'm forgetting something, Elliot.
Yeah, well, the one big question that we have is about the data analysis, and maybe Theo, could you give us an update on where we are on hiring someone?
Yeah, we're not any further on hiring somebody. We have a meeting with the individual. Let me bring up their name. This week, myself, Judith, and Claudia and Sarah. And she can give us information about the streamline process for contracting, and that's tomorrow at 11 a.m. So if you want to be there, if co-chairs want to be there, you're welcome to join, or if steering committee, if anybody on PCCEP wants to be there, you're welcome to join in on that meeting. I can send the invite accordingly, but we're just going to try to quicken the process. I sent a tentative draft of a scope of work. Elliot sent an updated version that more appropriately encapsulates the scope of work. And then we'll send that, so we'll meet with them, and then we'll try to get it done as quickly as possible, but we want to try to get it done by the end of March.
Get what done by the end of March? Get them
the
hired?
set
Or?
contract out so we can send it out to different folks. Elliot, you said you had one individual in mind. I have an individual in mind, then one more, and then we can send it out and make a decision based on their capacity for a quick turnaround, end of June or early July, after the testimony is given for council.
Oh, wait, you know what, that's going to be, I thought the point of, or in my mind, the point of this analysis is to help us develop the recommendations. So it needs to be done before the presentation to council. In fact, it should be. Yeah, I mean, what is the point of the analysis? It's to come up with the recommendations.
After testimony would be provided at council.
No, at council, we're providing the actual recommendations.
Got it. Okay, so then it'll be before the end of June.
So in other words, this is why the timing is key. I mean, I don't quite understand how the city bureaucracy works, but and maybe we could have this conversation. But if we, as soon as possible, in other words, by the end of March, I thought was the time we could, you know, I want the analysis done, because then we need to incorporate it into our coming up with the recommendations. Maybe that's not possible with the city bureaucracy, but at a certain point, this whole thing is not going to be relevant. It's going to be moot, because we're going to have to make the recommendations without the benefit of this analysis. So let's, you know, once this meeting is with who? Is with the person you've identified, or is with city people?
No, it's with city people who can do the contracting and who are familiar with doing quick turnarounds and contract work.
Okay. So once we could figure out then from them, like how soon it could be done, then we'll have a better sense of how to move it forward. But I feel a real urgency around making this happen to make it useful. So when is that meeting tomorrow?
11 a.m.
11 a.m. Okay, so yeah, maybe I don't know if is anyone here interested or able to attend that meeting. I'll try to attend if students don't sign up for my office hours. So we'll see. So maybe yeah, we'll just if you could let me know, send me the link or whatever to that.
One other thing I thought about, well, two other things. One is that thankfully we have confirmation from Mary Claire that we'll be getting the data available to then use with this analyst. So we sort of, all of it's on wait, but at least we have the data now to review. The other thing I wanted to mention was the, oh gosh, what was it? The status of like the work sessions with the mayor. Sorry, not the mayor, the city council. We wanted to try to have some sort of meeting with the city council's policies, the chiefs of staff, but it sort of turns out that it's going to not be that format. From what I understood last, Elliot, it was like we could have a meeting with each of the a policy representative from each city council office, or one meeting with the chiefs of staff, I believe, or something like that. Either way, it wasn't like exactly what we were asking for, but I wanted to raise that, see if anyone had any ideas of the best way we could have that meeting. The reason we would even have that meeting is to, at the point when we had a draft to talk with them about. So it'd be prior to disseminating the draft publicly, but I mean, obviously the public will be included in this process, but before disseminating it publicly, but not before we have like final drafts of anything yet. Just so that we can get like a temperature check from the city council around their opinion on the recommendations, so that when it goes to city council in May, we can sort of bake for success, so to say.
Mary Claire.
Can I just ask you a quick question? Is the analyst that you're going to use for the court patrol services the same one you were going to look at the force data?
So that's a good question because these are two separate things.
Right.
And the urgent one is the core patrol. But I think if we hired this person and given how difficult it is, we would like to have them also look at the force data, whatever,
Sure.
those reports.
So can I just also ask, and it might be a question of Theo, but who's going to draft the contract for this analyst?
So we as staff can develop the rough draft, but all the contracting has to go through services. We can't draft the hard contract.
Sure, no. And also, are you going to have a city attorney review it, given that it's a city contractor or whatever? I mean.
Yeah, this will all have to be in collaboration. I think Anika was on the last call
Okay.
with folks, and Anika, you can say that you were or weren't, but I believe you were on the last call when we were discussing the contract work around this.
Because to your other point, Elliot, I did hear from the city attorney that if you're going to do that, we would ask for, as part of that contract, that there be a non-disclosure clause for your analyst not to take the, data that we're going to give and, in any way use it for their own or disseminate it on their own. So if whoever's going to write the contract, the city attorney would like that, included in the, in whatever contract you develop.
So let me just ask you, because before when I asked you, you had said that it was public because it's been redacted. So
right.
what?
Yeah, no, the information is, but what the city attorney is saying is that PCCEP had a, specific, because you were a city entity. As I told you before, anybody else that wants this information has to apply through the public records process, okay? And in fact, actually, end up having to pay. And at some point I'll share with you how many hours and how many dollars this would have cost you. And so their position is that it's given to PCCEP, but it's not for you to disseminate to, to others. If they want the same information, that data that I'm handing you, like that flash drive, they would have to make the request of the city and go through the public records process.
Okay, so just to be clear,
Yeah.
the data is not public then. What is the data that's being given to us is just for PCCEP members,
Yeah.
and then the analysis that can be shared publicly.
Yes.
Okay.
But the actual data, if anybody else wants that stick or that whole data dump, basically, they'd have to make a public records request for their own use. This is solely for PCCEP's use.
Okay. Amy?
Thanks.
Yeah, my question, Mary Claire, is to you around, given that this process is new to me as far as your protocols and process around information sharing, is there some sort of document that explains what information is done the way you just described and what information is accessible without going through the request process?
Yeah, Amy, normally, everybody has to go through the public records request. The city attorney has set up a process that anybody who wants to make a request for any information of the city, there is a standard process.
Okay.
But, within the city, it was recognized that PCCEP had a little different standing because they were actually, an advisory council of the mayor. If Elliot had asked for this information himself, he would have had to make a public records request in his name and wait in line and pay, whatever the cost per page was for all this, or the hourly, whatever, however they calculate it, right?
Okay.
But, because of the nature of PCCEP, they're not basically charging you for this, for their time and effort in doing
coming out of
this.
their budget anyway. That would be
but,
like twice.
And so that's why, but, you know, there is definitely a process, you know, that you can read about with the city has a public records process.
But we can talk about the information contained within it without a problem, right?
Right,
Okay.
once,
Okay.
you know, Elliot, when PCCEP does their analysis, that
About the
you can talk
analysis.
about your analysis.
See the
But
data.
not
It's
the
just-
raw data.
It's just giving the raw data to other people, you know, that's.
Ah.
It's kind of like what happens with COCL and the DOJ. They got the unredacted reports, but they're able to do the analysis in
Right.
aggregate. Barbara, I see your hand.
What's the reason for for not letting people use the data or see the data without going through public records? Like if Elliot had it, for instance, and he wanted to give it to somebody, why couldn't he give it? I mean, I don't really, I mean, it's not like I understand with a corporation, they have secrets like, because they're going to make money off it, but I don't understand the reason here why somebody couldn't have the.
I think it's just the city has a process for providing information, and, you know, PCCEP has been given an exception to that process. And so they, you know, the city wants to respect the public records protocol that is in place for everybody who wants public information. So, you know, so that if you, like I said, if somebody else on the committee or outside of the committee wanted that, they would have to make the request of the city and go through that whole process. And I'm sorry, that's just the way the public records, and I don't know if Nika wants to comment further, but there is a process, and all, you know, I can't give you any, you know, they have really tightened up on that because there were so many complaints about that. So they set up a process for the entire city. It all has to go through one agency, which is the public records process. And then, you know, it's, you know, it's evaluated and done as, you know, in order. So if you asked today, you know, I mean, you guys asked a while ago, and it took us literally this long for the individual to go through every one of those pieces of paper and redact the information that is not of, you know, is not public information. So.
Oh, there's public and private information on the same document, you're saying?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But that's,
you know,
been
we
now
collect
redacted.
data, for example, we collect data on, you know, on mental health status. That is not public information for any, you know, in any way, shape.
Oh, you mean, so you want
literally a person at records is assigned 8 hours a day to go through every one of those FDCRs and after actions that you asked for and read them and black out the information that was not public information.
And that
So
information, hi, Mary Claire, this is Anika. That information is tracked and often reviewed by city attorneys if any of the information is exempt from being released to the public. So because PPB gets thousands of records requests in the up to tens of thousands a year, we have to be able to track them, and we have to be able to account for where they're going, because you know, if we release the wrong information, then we're liable.
Oh, I didn't realize there was maybe personal stuff on there.
Yeah, but
That's
but Barbara, just to be clear, the point of this process is they've redacted the personal information. So I guess, Anika, I've requested lots of these similar kinds of records from the National Archives, and they have a similar process to go through and make sure personal information is redacted. But once that has been gone through, and you know, you paid for it to go through, the National Archives makes that information publicly available to anyone.
Okay.
Because the idea is that, you know, the public is paying for the cost, or the person requesting is paying for the cost of doing the redactions. But once the redactions are done, then the information that's left is public, and the National Archives has the belief that that should be made publicly available to everyone.
It's a little different though, for
not
what we're saying
like
here is like we're having
the
a hard
city.
drive with information. Oh, okay, Alex, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
But that was all I was saying. It's a little different. I mean, I want to make sure I can get to the TRC stuff before I have to pop off.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, is that okay? Thank you, Mary Claire. Thank you, Barbara, for
Bet.
your questions. So, I mean, not a ton of updates, honestly, but at least to let everyone know, I guess, the status of it. And please, Anne, add in anything I forget or whatever other information. But we met with the gentleman by the name of Eduardo, I'm blanking on his last name, and this other gentleman, Auntie, with another complicated last name. And they are two individuals who worked with the Transitional Justice Project, which is a national organization, international organization that does transitional justice work, like Truth and Reconciliation Commissions. Eduardo himself participated on the Peruvian Truth and Reconciliation Commission back in the 2000s, and has done extensive work since then on the intricacies of planning of the TRC and creating and housing and what it looks like, and all of those really in-depth things that none of us really have a ton of knowledge on. He does, and so does Auntie in his work on the South African Truth and Reconciliation work as well. So they both were amazing individuals, and Laurel and not Miguel, can't remember his name. Two individuals from PSU. You remember their names off the top of my head? Miguel was Miguel. Okay. Laurel and Miguel, who are two staff from PSU's political coalition. I can't remember their full acronym either. I'm blanking on everything. They were the ones who connected us to Eduardo and Auntie, and they were at the meeting as well, providing some sort of other moderation aspects of things. The meeting was successful in the sense that we learned more, but it's not a ton we can apply or we were more of like asking a ton of questions about what does this look like? How is this going to work? How would this work in Portland? Some of the challenges we've already faced, we were airing, and we have another meeting happening, I think this week on the same topic, answering more of those questions. And this one might be better for us to share out information, like more like detailed information about. So we have like written out questions, and we'll write written out answers to those questions, which we'll disseminate to that 30-person list, and then schedule a meeting with that 30-person list. I'm just calling it that, for April, and moving forward from there. We don't really, like I said, there wasn't really anything, obviously there was nothing decided at that meeting last week, but there also just wasn't anything. It's hard to share like all of it because it was a lot of like jumping around between different topics, but more of like learning about what sort of work they've done in their past work on other American-based Truth and Reconciliation Commissions, which there's been a few and far in between. So this is apparently also one other thing I would share is that this is something that a lot of cities across the country have been exploring recently. And so we're excited to sort of learn alongside them. And that Barb graciously raised that the Commissioner Hardesty's office may be working on some other TRC work. Derek Bradley, the Chief of Staff for Commissioner Hardesty, got back to me today, just before this meeting, and says that they don't have any extensive, I think they've only been doing exploratory stuff as well, and they have not had any sort of full-on initiatives or proposals they've connected. And I've expressed interest in collaboration. Barb, I've expressed it, and I cannot express anything beyond that. And I said that should hopefully be in contact soon to maybe see if they had any ideas. Once again, this meeting this past week, or the week before, was very helpful in getting us better grounded in this stuff, but it wouldn't prove helpful to it's not going to prove helpful to anything we're doing as of now with PCCEP's planning committee. And so we're going to share out what's happening at this coming meeting, and hopefully we'll be able to work from there on something good and strong from there. I mean, it's really like one of the first questions we'll be asking is like, what could this look like in Portland? We gave them the background on what we think and what we know exists now. And so I don't want to talk around in circles. Anne, did you have anything else to say before we just answer some questions?
I think you encapsulated it correctly. We're still in a discovery phase.
Yeah, Elliot?
Yeah, so
all right, Barb had her hand up there. I'm sorry, Barb. You can go ahead if you.
Go ahead, Barb. Okay.
Oh, okay. I saw her comment. Okay, all right, go ahead. Elliot,
It
sorry.
was that.
Yeah.
So I think there's a process question at this point. What I understand the process having been is we'd formed that TRC subcommittee, and then we hit pause over the issue of stipends. And now we have a sort of Taji and Anne and Lakiana have been sort of doing this exploratory work. But it seems that if we're going to go forward with the planning process, we should reconvene that planning group as a larger entity. So get more people involved and
yeah, Anne and I talked earlier today about this.
Just asking. Okay.
Sorry, you were cutting off. I didn't want to cut you off. Okay. Like I said, I agree. Like, I think there is the value in bringing in more people. And like I also said, there is just too much. There was too much at that first meeting to really have everyone join in at that point. And there's similarly going to be probably just too much happening at this second meeting. And I say too much, in more of an arbitrary sense, like there's not definitive things for us to talk about. And we're more of talking around topics that don't pertain to any one particular subcommittee. We were talking about Greensboro, we were talking about Maine and what sort of work they did, and more of just like us trying to get a grounding in the work before we can even get people involved in it. So that's why this next meeting will be sort of the first attempt at doing that. We'll send this Q&A and answers to that subcommittee, and then set up a time to meet and have Eduardo and them at that third meeting. If that hopefully answers your question. Like I said, it is a matter of trying to like balance making sure that people are involved and also making sure that we're not putting people into situations where they're just going to have a bajillion questions that we just got answered at the last meeting that then they would be asking again, sort of unearthing the same things. We want us all to have a clear understanding so that we can answer those questions for the community rather than Eduardo and them having to answer them again and again.
No, I totally understand that. And I think that it's great that you've been doing these meetings to get that information. I just think the last public thing we said was this whole thing was on hold.
So we've sent an email already. We've already sent an email stating where we are, that we've met with the Eduardo folks, and that we will be getting them an update in a couple weeks. And that's what this is going to be coming on Thursday.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for checking in. What are the names of the TRC people again? I can get your real names for them. Do you have them? And
I'm looking them up.
Auntie Hentikanen and Eduardo Gonzalez. I'll put them in the chat. They're well-renowned people. You could look them up and probably find info. I'll put them in the chat because they're, you just did? Okay, I'll do it now.
I don't know if Lakiana has anything to add. He was there as well.
No, I think you guys hit it on the head. I would just say that, the more I've listened to these meetings, like the one we were just at, just really shows and appreciate just the work that it would take to really pull something like this off. So yeah, great job on the report back up.
Okay, thank you, Lakiana. Barb, I have to go in a second, so let me just answer this question, then I'll head off. Barb, go ahead.
What about doing it in the similar way that you did the Core Patrol services? Getting a bunch of people in, talking in smaller groups, and then like reporting back?
So we'll be having, I'm envisioning there'll be at least one webinar, if not more, on the topic, like to answer a lot of those initial questions. I'm a little skeptical to that model of information sharing at this early of a stage just now. Like, I don't think it's a bad idea. I just think like when we have for example, yeah, I feel like when we have something more substantive to share, right now I'm once again still too everything is too up in the air still. Like I can't even say how much of a non-pause the TRC work is, because we haven't decided like, okay, so we're gonna have a proposal together by June and get that to the city council so they can vote on by the fall bump.
Is the sound
Like
on?
that was the previous plan. We don't have like a new one in place. So I just don't even have, I don't want to opine on whether or not that format would be good now, but rather that we could maybe do it later.
It makes no sense to me a little bit of what you're doing now then, because you have a community that's been hurt. You have communities that have been hurt. And one of the best things to do isn't to re-traumatize them by having them retell their story, but inviting them in to help change what's going on. So that is why I'm not saying it needs to be before you figure out if you're getting paid or whatever. That's like neither here nor there, basically, to my comment. So that's it, Taji.
Yeah, thank you, Barb, as always, for your feedback. I wholeheartedly agree as well, and hope to see as much community engagement on this as possible. And that please don't think that these first meetings are indicative of how we want to have the further work of this be engage with the community, because it should be as many people as possible involved as throughout the process, once there's an actual process to be involved in, if that makes any sense. I have to pop off, leave off the call now, but Anne can probably answer. Oh, Jared, do you have anything to say, or are you just saying hi? Good to see your face. Cool.
Okay,
thank you,
great.
everyone, and have a great night.
Thanks, Taji. Okay, so next up we have Jared and the DOJ COCL, not the DOJ COCL report, the DOJ report about the settlement agreement. And we wanted to bring this up and talk about it at our next full board meeting. So Jared, do you want to say anything about the report or what you want to present at that meeting?
Yeah, I was going to, take direction from the committee, what you guys want, a slight preference for earlier, if you want to give us an hour, of your agenda, or a half hour, we can do the 5-minute version of our presentation, or we could do a longer version. I assume that you guys want to ask questions and might want the shorter version, but, let us know what you want. And then because Jonas is going to be joining us from DC, slight preference for the earlier end of the meeting, if possible, just because he's going to be calling in. He's got kids and stuff. So, but again, if you want to put us at the end, like I wouldn't cry about it. But no, yeah, just let us know what you want.
Well, we don't want to make you cry or not make you cry. And I think having you go at the beginning makes a lot of sense, because this is a really important report. I would like to give it an hour. We'll have to see in a second about the agenda, but I think we probably will have enough room for an hour. My own personal view is that focusing, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to spend a lot of time going through the stuff that's in compliance, because it's been in compliance for a while, but to focus on the areas that are out of compliance and sort of do a deeper dive into those. And maybe it could be, like the COCL did, or maybe a little less, like 20-30-minute presentation, and then leave 30 minutes for Q&A.
That's great. I'll shoot for, tell Jonas 10 to 20. I think he tends to go on a little bit. This is being recorded. Oops. No, the one exception, I am going to probably want to talk a little bit about paragraph 89. I know it's been in compliance, but that was one that PCCEP recommended specifically that we take a fresh look at. And, we take a fresh look at everything, but that's one where, I might want to spend a couple of my minutes, notwithstanding that it's been in compliance and repeatedly been found in compliance. But yeah, I'll send that direction back and just wait to see the agenda then and make sure Jonas is prepared for the 30,000 foot presentation and we'll take the questions.
Are there any other comments or questions for Jared or about the DOJ report? Hearing none. Well, thank you, Jared, and we look forward to that presentation. Oh, Barb's got a question. Barb, you're on mute.
It's Amy has to unmute me thing. See, we're working together. Okay, just because I don't know, what's paragraph 89?
That's the one about establishing a walk-in or drop-off center. So it implicates the Unity Center.
Yeah. I totally with you. Totally with you.
Patrick's subcommittee to create a recommendation. And
I figured if I wondered, somebody else would too. Whatever.
Apologies.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. Yeah, no, that when you said paragraph 89, I had no idea. And then I was like, oh, I know what that paragraph's about. Okay, so we could, I'm glad we discussed
Another compliment from Elliot, I think.
That was definitely a compliment. The next item on our agenda is the full board agenda, building that out. So what I have, aside from our regular introductions and report backs, will be the DOJ report, the bylaw discussion, and are there other recommendations that anyone knows about coming from subcommittees? Or the directives?
Yes.
Anne, the directives are going to come out of the settlement subcommittee?
Yes.
I will say also that the youth subcommittee is working on a recommendation. They discussed it last night at their monthly meeting, and I'm not exactly sure their timeline. They just discussed it.
Yeah, and just that isn't going to be ready for this month.
Okay, so basically we have the DOJ report and then the directives, the bylaws, the directives, and anything else that I'm missing?
Do we want to, we didn't get to the section on the Google Doc about the group agreements. Do we want to talk about that then, or have some time to talk about it then?
Sure. Let me share my screen again so people could see what Anne is referring to. So at the bottom of, let me get to this, of that document that I was sharing, there is a group, our group values that Anne has taken a stab at revising, and these are the revisions that she has come up with. So I think the idea would be to discuss those as a group and maybe vote on them. Is there anything you want to say about the revisions and why you think it's important to have these revisions?
Yes, thank you. I've talked about them at meetings before. I respect that they were put together with care, of course, with members. I think that there are too many of them, and I'd like to just see a smaller number that we can all kind of review, possibly before, once or twice, maybe a year or maybe more often, to just stay on track. Some of these are taken, just condensed from the ones that are current. So it's just up for discussion.
Thank you. So I will stop the sharing of that document. And so it seems like, Claudia, I hope you got all of those issues. Hand up now. Oh, okay. Barb, is that a hand up?
Elliot, are you talking about for the agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have so far the DOJ report, the bylaws / group values, and then the PBB directives. Am I missing anything?
That's it. Thank you. Barb?
Subcommittee reports.
Oh, yeah. So, right at the beginning.
And also the group values piece.
Yeah,
that we
I added that the subcommittee reports and the PBB reports in the mayor reports, those are like automatics on the first of that go on first for the agenda. So then I just add the additional items that you guys come up with every month.
Okay, that's not what I wanted to talk about though.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just, I always have opinions on everything, right? But I've had this thought for a while. One, y'all have a marketing problem. Again, I'm telling you this. If I go out and ask 100 people, 50 of them if they know what PCCEP is, and 50 of them if they know what, Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, people only know it by one or the other for one. But I think it would be really, so with that, with you guys doing your introductions, it would be really cool if you guys like alternated or made sure that both of those were in there like somewhat equally. But also as far as the group values go, and I like it when Anne reads them, but it's crossed my mind that maybe y'all should read them like one person, the next person, the next person. I realize it's hard, it would be hard on Zoom, but it probably wouldn't be that hard to figure out how to do it and decide how to do it. Does that make sense? If you so desire.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. And I think when people introduce themselves, maybe everyone could take one of the values and say them. That might be
Oh, that's an idea too.
A way to distribute that and maybe also reinforce that. In terms of like the name recognition of PCCEP versus Portland Committee on whatever it's called, because I can never remember myself.
Yeah, Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing. Yes, it's a tongue twister.
I think what we need a logo, like a swoosh, and then we could just get rid of the names altogether, and then we could just like put some kind of logo, like a gun with a slash through it or something.
Yeah, but wait a minute. What I wanted to say was during the last meeting, the print and background that you guys used looked phenomenal on my end. It was like it was the triangle print. And it looked so good in the background, and it made the words really easy to read on the value slide. So I just wanted you to know that sometimes colors and prints and backgrounds can enhance the readability of the information. It doesn't necessarily have to be, shortened up, but how it's laid out is also really important. And I just want to say it was an awesome print. And I would continue using that format. It looked really good.
Thanks, and props to Taji, who he did that whole like all those triangles. So he deserves all the credit for that.
Okay, whatever. It was awesome looking.
Great. Okay, so the last item is about retreat agenda, which basically is just first of all an announcement about the retreat, and then talking about what is going to be at the retreat. And I guess Judith is not on the call, but maybe Theo can tell us what's up with that.
Sure. So the doodle poll was sent out to you all as far as the retreat goes. And I think we heard back from 6 people. Claudia, is that right?
Yeah, so far we've heard from 6 people, and we were waiting for 5 folks to vote, but we ultimately just picked the most common date that everyone voted on, which was March 30th. So PCCEP members should have gotten that retreat Zoom invite this morning. If you didn't, let me know and I can resend it to you.
And if you can't make that date for whatever time, please let us know as soon as possible, because we really do want as many folks there as possible. But we sent out the doodle poll, and I appreciate sending some responses back. Even though 6 doesn't sound like a lot, it's the most we've ever got from a doodle poll.
Well, it turns out PCEP members are as as bad at responding as everyone else. So thanks for moving that forward and getting that scheduled. Theo, could you give us any updates on who the facilitator is and what the agenda is, or what we're going to be talking about?
Sure. We're going to share the agenda closer to the time of the retreat, but Dr. Smith will be there for the first part of the meeting. That's Dr. Markeisha Smith, for those of you who are unaware. She's the director of the Office of Equity and Human Rights. And for the rest of the meeting, Judith will provide that facilitation.
Great. Any comments or questions about that from anyone on the call?
We'll have Dr. Smith for an hour in the first part.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just for people who are in the public who might not be aware, our regular meetings are subject to public whatever records and are open and recorded, but the retreat is like, we don't do work at the retreat. It's more of an internal processing dynamics kind of thing. So those meetings are held in executive session and are not recorded and are not made public. So just people know what we do at the retreat. Okay, well, we're at the end of our agenda. Is there anything else that we've not covered that someone wants to raise at this point with our last 10 minutes? Well, I cede you all 10 minutes back to your evening, and thank you for joining tonight. And Mary Clara, thanks for getting us those FDCR reports. We'll be hopefully getting an analyst to look through them quickly or soon. And we will see you all in 2 weeks at the full board meeting, and then the regular subcommittee meetings that are happening regularly as well. So take care.
All right, you too. Ta-ta.